What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Carlos de la Playa, and I'm here to talk to you about one of my most asked questions. How do I get started on journaling? Journaling for self-discovery, journaling for creativity, whatever the reason might be, but having a steady journaling practice. Now, before I even get into a how-to process, so to speak, there's a certain mechanism that happens in the mind for most people, and especially me in my experience, especially when I first started journaling and still to this day. And it's the fact that anytime we take on any creative process, whether it's writing for creativity, writing for journaling, making a video, dancing, drawing, coming up with a solution or an idea to a business problem, whatever it may be, is that each of us come into contact with the inner critic in our mind, and or the gremlin, the parasite of the mind, the devil on the shoulder, the inner judge. It's basically that voice that judges every idea or every thought as like not being good enough, or not being the correct way to do something, or not being clear enough. Basically anything that has to do with not being enough, and really judging you to a point where we might decide not to even try or to continue with that creative process. So journaling brings up this inner critic as well, and I would say for me, journaling is probably the best way for me to come to contact with the inner critic and learn to keep going anyways. And once that initial struggle and internal battle gets transcended and you keep pushing through and doing it anyways, essentially what happens is this is where flow comes in, and it's that feeling of kind of timelessness within a practice. It's that feeling where when an athlete is in the zone, or when a painter or artist is in the zone, and time kind of starts to warp in a way. And not only that, but the mind stops chattering so much and you're really in the present moment. So in this process of journaling, essentially the idea is to understand that the inner judge is going to come up in your process. Do it anyways. Do it anyways. Maybe even write down the thoughts that the inner judge is trying to convey to you. Maybe even name this inner judge for fun. And every time their voice comes up, telling them to take a hike and to just go through with it. Like, go through with the process of what it is that you said you were going to try. Whether it's journaling in this case, or another creative process that you're picking up. So basically, there's two basic ways that I like to journal, and I think these two ways are really good at helping transcend that inner judge so you can reach a more natural flow within your journaling practice. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is called stream of consciousness writing, or free writing. And the basic premise of this is you can either set a timer or not. This is totally up to you. To start, I recommend maybe setting between a 3-minute timer, a 5-minute timer, or a 10-minute timer. It's totally up to you. And basically what you do is once you start this timer, you put the pen to paper or hands to keyboard, whatever medium you prefer, and you write every word and every thought that comes to mind. And it might not make sense. And the idea is that as you're doing this, the inner critic is going to come in and start saying things like, this is pointless, this is weird, this doesn't make sense, and you're going to want to stop. The idea is to keep going and transcend that until the timer goes off. And when the timer goes off, then you're done writing. And in my experience, what I've found in free writing is that this in and of itself is literally a measurable way for me to come into contact with that voice of that inner critic that's gonna try and get me to stop writing and pushing through, bursting through it anyways. And in my experience, I found that right when I pass that feeling of like ickiness and discomfort in my body because I'm judging what I'm writing, I start to flow, like I spoke about before. And I start to write things that really surprise me, that I didn't know I had in me. Sometimes I might start rhyming by accident and it starts sounding like a poem. And I can take this little seed or start of a poem and take that after I finish rewriting and free writing and begin to write poetry. Sometimes what comes through in that free writing experience is an insight or wisdom that I didn't know I had. And I can take that wisdom later and turn it into a blog post, or maybe just journal on what this insight means to me and have a conversation with myself about that. And that's the beautiful part of free writing is that you're coming right in contact with that inner judge, that dragon that lives inside of us that everyone needs to slay on a day-to-day basis. And we get to really practice like beating it and experiencing a flow state, which is magical. And the more flow states, in my experience, that I experience in a day, the happier overall that I am in my life. And I'm obsessed with understanding the flow state. And that concludes basically the free writing portion. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the second exercise, which honestly, this is really good to, you can either choose to do one or the other. You can choose to do free writing and then number 2, which I'm about to explain to you, or you can do vice versa. Really, whatever you decide is perfect. And there's no right or wrong way to journal. But number 2 is to have a conversation with yourself and to practice answering your own questions, specifically open-ended questions. So an open-ended question is basically any question that you can't answer with a yes or a no. So you would start an open-ended question typically with who, what, when, where, why, or how. And then there's various other subtleties to how you can ask open-ended questions, but for the sake of this starter journaling video, we'll stick with those. And basically, it's the practice of asking yourself a question that promotes a response that's bigger than or more detailed than a yes or no response. And an open-ended question has actually been shown to turn on the right side of the brain. And the right side of the brain is associated with creativity, with flow, with a more sort of surrendering kind of energy, which these states of mind and having that part of the brain turned on has been shown that creatives actually have that part of their brain turned on at all times. Or most of the day. What you're gonna do is you're literally going to ask yourself any open-ended question. And if you're struggling to think of like, what question should I ask myself, right? Even that question is an open-ended question. And I invite you to write that question down. What question should I ask myself? And then list about 3 to 5 options that come up. And again, really let go of the need to find the perfect answer or the right choice. There's no right or wrong here in journaling, because whatever it is you do when you're writing, that whenever you're putting pen to paper and choosing to have a conversation with yourself on your journal, you are getting to know yourself more. You are increasing your capacity to feel flow, increasing your understanding of your emotional intelligence, and so many other benefits. After you write down all your 3 to 5 responses, pick the one that interests you the most, or excites you the most, or you feel is the most important one for you to answer. And really trust yourself here. Journaling is all about building self-trust by talking to yourself more, speaking to yourself. Every time I journal, I'm on a date with myself. And I think that's such a great way to look at it. And honestly, like, for your sake, because I understand when I first started, I was very critical of my own intuition and my own judgment, so it was hard for me to decide what questions to answer. So for your convenience, down in the description section below, I'm going to include a link to a PDF document that I've curated for any of you who's interested, with a list of open-ended questions. And really, if you'd like, you can explore those questions, and I invite you to maybe take those questions and make them your own, and add your own little details to them to really start the journaling process. And remember, with journaling, a little goes a long way. You don't have to start out writing an hour, 2 hours a day and be a writer like that. No. However, what does matter, and where I've found I've benefited the most from this process, is when I have a consistent practice. So come up with what feels good for you. As far as when to journal in the day, I like to journal every morning and then whenever else I feel like it during the day. There are times where I journal in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night. However, when I started, I only did it in the morning. Now, if that doesn't work for you, choose a time. Any time that you're willing to commit to every single day, in which you journal for between 5 and 10 minutes. That's a great way to start. Eventually, when it becomes a habit, you'll catch a wave, and 20, 30 minutes will pass by because you hit that flow state that I'm speaking of, that so many people crave. It's why so many people do drugs and things of that nature, because they're seeking that high of that flow state, and other reasons as well, but this is one of the main reasons in my opinion. And basically, start with 5 to 10 minutes a day. And make it a habit, make it fun. And remember that on this process, I invite you to practice a gentle self-awareness. Things might come up. Some difficult emotions might come up, and thoughts about yourself might come up. Writing down those thoughts is a great way to get them out of your head and onto something external. From this space, you are literally acknowledging and validating your own experience without judgment. And you're now inviting a curiosity to your emotions. And curiosity is a great way to understand yourself better, rather than keeping it in your head and just spinning in mental warfare with yourself. So, with that said, that basically concludes my video. Remember, there's 2 ways to journal that I discussed here. The free writing method, and asking yourself an open-ended question and practicing answering those questions. Now, remember, this process, you're just starting. Be gentle with yourself. It's a practice in learning how to trust yourself more. And every single time that you're doing it, you're strengthening your capacity to experience your own flow and to get to know yourself better. So give yourself that gift of journaling. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. If this video provided any value to you, please support me by liking and subscribing to my channel, maybe even sharing the video with someone who might need this message. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next video.